I don't know how to describe it other than like a demon type of sound.
But it's silhouetted, hulking, every bit of 5.5 feet wide, 13 to 14 foot tall, pitch black.
The one thing that ran through my mind when I had this encounter was I don't have a big enough gun.
Your host, two-time witness and field researcher for more than 40 years, William Jevning. Welcome to Creek Devil.
Hi, everyone. I'm talking with Don in Maine again. Don, how are you, buddy?
Good, Will. How you been?
Busy. I just bought a brand new car, so that's keeping me busy.
Oh, good. Yeah, that'll keep you busy paying for it, right?
Oh, yeah, no kidding.
Well, that's...
Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just saying that's good. Glad to hear it.
Yeah, well, it's been a long time since I had a brand new one, so I figured, well, before I retire, I'm going to treat myself to a new one.
Yeah, it's always nice to sit in a nice new car, too, you know.
Oh, no doubt. We're doing this ongoing update with you because of the stuff that's been going on around your house. This particular time, we're going to talk about all the audio that you've recorded and all the vocalizations. So I'm going to let you go ahead and take it from here, and then at the end of the recording, I'm just going to attach a number of those audio clips that you sent me onto here so people can hear what you've been recording.
Okay, good. All right, so the most common thing I'm hearing, and I'm hearing it multiple times, I actually call them mowls now because I don't know what else to call them. But it's the barred owl call, but these things go off. They go off into this crazy monkey. It sounds just like a monkey out there going, wah, wah. But they do this pretty consistently. The same thing, I have it on several recordings, but the ones I sent you came in, they were actually right in my backyard, probably 150 feet from me doing this, and it was loud. Those ones are pretty common. The screams I sent you, I thought I've heard them before, and I thought they were foxes, but I've put fox up on my audio graph thing where I can put the sounds up and look at them. And what I notice about with the Bigfoot, their sound doesn't come out all like the foxes blow all their sound and then it dwindles down. You know, the sound goes down, but the Bigfoot start off low and ramp up to the big sound.
Correct, yes.
Yeah, and I see that on all the recordings, but most of the animals we hear out there, even the foxes, they're initially they're letting all their sound out, and then it peters out.
It was interesting. You what was it that you called the sounds again?
Oh, the mowls.
Mowls. I was recording last week's show was a second part of a two-part series I did with Richard in Idaho, and he was talking about a real recent experience he had where the Sasquatch were making these sounds near cattle, and he called it a moo roar.
A moo roar.
Because they would moo, and then it would develop into a loud roar at the end of that, so it was a moo roar.
Right. See, and that's funny because that's kind of what they're doing here. They start off with the owl, and then it develops into that noise they're making. That, you know, I can't even explain. I try to do it. I can't do it. But, yeah, in last Tuesday, I think, was the good one that I sent you, and I was sitting outside. I could hear him out there. I could hear him around my house, and I heard an owl way off in the distance. And I mimicked that owl, but I did it very softly, and I'm sure they could hear me do it around the house. But that's what started that one off. As soon as I did it, these things just went off, and they were doing that around my house. I mean, you can hear the volume in the recording, you know, in the echo. And another thing I mentioned on the text earlier is last year I noticed they were really ramping up the vocals right before they left. And I think they're going to be leaving soon because they're really ramping up the vocals these past couple weeks.
And it's right at the same time of year that they've been leaving before?
Yeah, November 7th they left last year.
Okay.
You know, and they really like that week in November they were really getting vocal out there that last week. And then then it snowed like a few days afterwards. I didn't know if they knew that snow was coming, but now, do you think that they're doing this to let the other groups in the area know that they're going to be moving through the area?
It's very possible. You know,
right.
Depending, I mean, there's so little we know about the interaction between the groups, but it's very possible that's what's going on. I mean, I can't picture any other reason they'd be doing all that vocalizing and then leave.
Right. That's what I'm getting from it. That's what it seems like. Now, one of the guys, the store owners around here that I showed the footprints to, he called me over. I think it was Wednesday. I saw him in the store, and he called me over, and he looked at me, and he said, "I wish I never talked to you." He goes out, he sets up trap lines, beaver lines, and he goes out midnight to 5 in the morning. Well, ever since I showed him the tracks, he's been looking around, and he told me he found a massive foot of track going into a gully. It's a dried river area, so it left some nice prints, and then it went up the bank, and he said it just pushed the bushes aside and trees aside, and you can just see where it went through. Now, I just saw this guy. I haven't got a chance to see him again, but he's got pictures of it, and I asked him, I said, "You got toes and everything?" And he said, "Oh, yeah." He said, "It's a clear foot, twice as big as his." And I said, "Oh, geez." And now this is on the other side of the ponds that I'm at one side of the ponds. He's on the other side, about 4 or 5 miles away.
I was very curious, you know, about the pictures. I was going to ask you if you took pictures because I'm interested in comparing what he has to what you have.
Right. That's exactly what I want to see. When he said how massive it was, it could be a Type 1, you know.
Yeah, I recall, you know, I think I told you, Mr. Black, I showed him the pictures of your footprints, and he said right away it was a Type 4.
Right.
And in the new book that I'm working on right now, I got a picture from a native in Alaska who got a picture of one while he was hunting, and I showed that to Mr. Black, and he immediately said it was a Type 4. So it's kind of interesting, you know, we have, and I'll send that to you so you can have a look at it.
Right. Is it similar?
It's actually very different than what you see in the Patterson film. I mean, you can it's kind of the same general build. But the real distinguishing feature, and I didn't know this, you know, Mr. Black hasn't really, I've got to sit down with him, you know, in person for him to really fill me in on all the details of the different types, which he's going to do, and I'm going to put that in another book. Okay. But the Type 4, he said, and in this picture, it shows it looks like it's balding, like the top of its head is bald with hair on the sides. Huh. And he said that's a feature that's very similar to humans, of course, but it's only in the Type 4s.
That's really interesting because my buddy that had the sighting here when he was 14, not far from where I am now, he said it looked like an old man, an old Neanderthal caveman, and he said he was balding.
Exactly, and that's what he called it. Mr. Black said they're mistaken for kind of a Neanderthal look.
Right.
They have facial wrinkles and things like that, where the other three types don't have that so much.
And another thing is, if you've ever seen, I'm sure you have, but like a wax figure of a Neanderthal, they have very beady, small eyes.
Right.
And that's what I saw. That's another thing I was going to bring up to you and ask you if you knew it was a Type 4 characteristic, is the size of the eyeball that I saw inside the socket. I have never seen a drawing or anything come close to it. The eyeball I saw was very small inside that socket.
I'll have to ask him, but you know, in the photograph that I mentioned, there is eye shine on it, and it doesn't look as large as. Now I've seen eye shine with Sasquatches at night, and it usually looks pretty good size.
Right.
What's in this picture doesn't look as large as what I've seen.
Okay, because that would help to further the image of the Neanderthal in their eyes. You know, those beady eyes. I think that's because I've talked to my buddy a few times. Eventually, he's going to call you, but he said the same thing. It had those very small eyes, and he always points to the same picture that I show him, and it's a wax figure of a Neanderthal man.
I need to put you in touch with my artist. I've got an artist working on. I mean, he's a super good artist, and he's working on all the four types, the individual types.
Okay.
So I'm having him work with, and he doesn't really do phones. What he does, he likes to text or email. So you can exchange back and forth information with him that way. But
yeah, because you remember that day that I saw the eyes. I drew them that day, and I still have that picture, and I still look at it, and I still remember that those eyes were very small compared to the socket.
Right.
You know, in every other picture I've seen that there's many Bigfoot artists there that do a good job, but I've never seen one with small eyes in the socket. You know, they all have an eye they all have an eye that looks half the size of the socket. This was tiny. This was very tiny inside the socket. So, yeah, I'd like to talk to him about that. I'd like to get a picture of that drawn. That'd be cool.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, tell me about the recordings now, the different ones.
Okay.
You know, and what distinguishes them from, aside from the volume. Now, you've checked on the digital graph.
Yeah.
The differences in volume and things like that with each recording, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so tell me about the different recordings.
Okay. Well, most of the ones I did send you were close. There was a couple in the distance I sent you. I get a lot of... Oh, yeah. Okay, now I noticed recording last year, I was getting mostly clicks, pops, and I remember asking you if you really had heard much of that, and you said something about mostly hearing high-pitched whistles.
Mostly, yes.
Okay, well, I have that high-pitched whistle now. I didn't have it last year. It was mostly pops and clicks last year.
Okay.
And it's changed this year. It's a lot of high-pitched whistles this year. In fact, that's what they first do when they move into my yard. They all give little high-pitched whistles, and you know, for their location. The loons, they were in my yard. Two of them were in my backyard, and one of them, off in the distance, started making the sound of a loon. And it's not a loon. I live the pond is about a mile away where the loons are. And loons don't come out of water. If they do, they don't go far. They can't walk on land that good. So in my backyard, these two Bigfoot started going off, and they were going back and forth to each other, making this loon sound. And there was still the one way up on the hill doing the long, eerie loon sound, while the ones down behind my house were doing the wah, 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 that part of the loon sound. But they were going back and forth. One would do it, the next would do it. And then one of them, you can actually hear him leaving my yard, still doing it. And one stayed in my yard, and the other one left and took off. And that has happened, half a dozen times in the past month. And they're all pretty close to my house. Well, it's crazy because I go to talk to my neighbors the next day and nobody ever hears anything. And these are loud. Those owl calls he was doing were loud.
Let me ask you, is this typically in daytime or nighttime?
All between 12 and like 2:30 at night.
A.M.
Yeah.
Now, a lot of these birds aren't out and active during those hours, correct?
Correct. Yeah, there's the only thing you'll hear at night for squeaking or whistles would be mice. We have sugar gliders here, the little flying squirrels, and they give a very, very chirpy, very high-pitched chirpy sound because I've been outside before and I've bothered them before, and they come down out of the tree chirping at me. I know what they sound like. But these high-pitched whistles, some of them go on. I have some of them recorded for 10 minutes, just going off and off. And I can see, when you listen to the recordings, you can hear the one that's in my yard or two that stay in my yard all the time. You can hear them clicking back and forth. And then they do this other sound, well, I don't know what it is. It sounds like crunching. But you'll hear the same exact crunch. And it doesn't just crunch, it goes crunch, 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 crunch.
That's interesting.
It's very weird. I don't know exactly how they're doing it. Now, I've gone outside, and I try to initiate them, get things going, and I usually do a hoo-hoo. Since they do, I've got a hoo-hooed again at. One was, I was sitting outside, not about a week ago, just sitting on the ladder, looking out into the woods. It was about midnight, and one right across from me just gave me a hoo-hoo. So I gave him a whistle and went back in the house. And then about 4 days ago, I went outside. It was a little windy, and I had the recorder going, and I gave a hoo-hoo because I couldn't hear anything out there. And right behind me, I don't know, 50 feet in the woods, I got a whistle return. And that's exactly opposite of what happened 4 or 5 days earlier. And it's on the recorder. It's tough to hear the whistle, but you can barely hear the whistle. You can hear me do the hoo-hoo, but the whistle is very tough. The belch response was kind of interesting. I went out one night and I belched. I did that last year too, and I recorded that last year, and I think we talked about it. He clicked and popped as a reply, but this year he actually clicked at me and then belched back.
You know, these guys are funny. They imitate all kinds of sounds.
Yeah, it's funny. It was pretty funny. I mean, some of the noises they're making out there, these screams, and then I guess these things I call moans, just kind of like the whoa, I call them moans, but I don't know if they like to do it when I'm out there. They hear me go outside, and then I hear them up in the woods. Sometimes I hear them in the house, and I'll go outside and listen to them. But I'll go outside and sit there, and they'll start going off. I don't know if they're doing it to warn the others that I'm sitting out there.
That's probably, well, maybe not a warning so much, but
just to let them know.
They're letting them know that you're outside, and that's typically, what goes on.
That is right. Okay. Yeah, that it's funny because it's different too. Like the other night, a scream came out of the woods, and it sounded like a fox or a cat, but I got 3 of them recorded, and there's something different about them. One of them is longer than any fox scream that I've heard or that I found online. It just had a little bit more lung power than a fox. And it's just, they go through all the sounds. I'm getting so many different sounds. Mm-hmm. I'm getting the clicks. I'm getting some sounds that I can't even explain. And then I think I sent you that one that sounds like a Jurassic. It sounds like a T-Rex scream. And then you can hear almost like bongo playing. And I think he's doing it with his mouth. I don't know what he's doing it with. It almost sounds like he's playing bongos out there. Don't, 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 don't. I don't know what he's doing.
That's strange, yeah.
Yeah, did you listen to that one? It kind of sounds like I call it the Jurassic one or something. I think I labeled it.
Right.
But it's tough to hear. You can hear the Jurassic scream, and then it's tough to hear those bongos, but then they come in. Then you can hear them. Mm-hmm. I don't know what's changing. Maybe the wind changed. But they were off in the distance a little bit.
Or it could be the direction he's facing. Maybe he's moving his head when he's doing it.
Yes, and I've noticed that on the recordings too. Some of those owl calls will sound like they're in the distance, and then all of a sudden he's like right there. It's like he turns around.
And that could very well be depending on if they're signaling which direction they're facing and how the sound carries.
Okay, yeah. And now the other night, this was I've been taking the guitar out. And the guitar is bringing one of them in very, very close, like little unnerving. I get up every time and go back in the house. He's coming in close. I could hear him breathing. He came in that about 50 feet from me. Well, I could hear him brushing against the leaves and just coming in very slow. And I can't see out there. It's pitch black, and he's only 50, 60 feet from me. And I just had to get up and go back in the house. And I really don't want to just blast a light right in his face, you know? I don't want to turn him away. I really want to get him on film first.
Yeah, going back in the house is probably the best response.
Yeah, I let them know. When I know that they're out there, I just put my hand up and go right in. I go in the house. When they let me know that they're there, I go in. Yeah, I still tap on a rock every time I leave the woods. And when I'm not going to return to the woods anymore, I tap on a rock. And the recorder is very close to that. You can hear me tap on the rock on the recorder. And they are right there when I put the recorder down. And when I get the recorder in the morning, they are still there. Now, this morning, I went out to get the recorder, and something didn't take off running. It was near the recorder as I was walking up to it. It just walked through the brush and stood and stopped in the wood line. It was about 6 o'clock this morning. It was still a little dark out. But when I went up to get the recorder, I heard something just walk over to the wood line and just stop right there. So I get home and I download the recorder, and something was right there. They're there from the time I put the recorder to the time I pick it up.
Yeah, they've got a sentry keeping an eye on you.
Yeah, so they have to be fairly close. I mean, they can move through the woods without anyone seeing them. You know, I was thinking about that. I've been foraging for mushrooms up there for over 10 years. Every single year, I spend lots of hours in the woods looking for mushrooms, and I've never run across anybody, ever. You know, so nobody goes out there. So they could travel during the day pretty safely out there.
Sure.
You know, for the most part, anyway. Yeah. But let me see. What else did I have for recording? I had something called the coyotes. I hear coyotes up back all the time, but this one recording, there's sounds in it that it does not sound coyote. Everything about it was different than the normal coyotes I hear up there. And I don't know, it could be coyotes and the squatch together. I don't know. It just did not sound normal when I hear it. And that's the thing too, is I hear foxes, I hear fishes, I hear all the animals up here. But when these things do it, they do it behind my house, and you just know something's different about it, you know?
Well, and it's not an exact replica.
Right. That's the big thing. It's so loud, and it almost sounds like a person out there doing it.
And it's off a little bit. It's not what the animal sound is exact.
Right. Yeah. One of the I think I sent you one called More Owls. And when they're doing owls in that one, it almost sounds like a person. They're not putting too much effort into it. But then they go off doing their monkey thing again.
Yeah.
But yes, and that's another thing too, is like none of them are the same. They're all different. You know, they don't do when they go off doing these sounds, they don't do the same one. They're very similar, but none of them are the same. Okay, now let me see, what other ones do I have? I have the high-pitched whistle, but unfortunately my phone does not record that high-pitched whistle, because I'm recording onto my phone from my computer. And the phone does not record that high-pitched whistle that well. Yeah. So hopefully I can send that to you just in an email and not through the phone.
Okay, sure.
I've got the clicking. The clicking and popping, I don't know. It seems like a language, Will. It really does. It just goes on. I have some recordings of that clicking and popping going on for 3 hours, 4 hours. I mean, I've got so many hours of that stuff. It really should go, gone through.
It kind of reminds me of, and I don't remember the tribe in Africa, but I saw something years ago about a particular group of people in Africa that incorporate a lot of clicking and popping sounds in their speech, and those are actually part of the language. Right,
and that's what I think it is, because you don't hear it all night, some nights that's all you hear is clicking and popping, but every single night you can hear pops, clicks, but like you said, it's worked in to this crunching and sneezing. I hear a lot of sneezing. Almost sometimes you think you're hearing too much sneezing, that they're using the sneezing, or it sounds like a sneeze. But that's what it sounds like, unless they get into a dusty area or something. But some nights that he just sneezes for a couple hours.
It almost makes me wonder if it isn't a fairly younger group, and like with kids or even chimps and other primates, will do a lot of things that maybe adults, older adults wouldn't do. So maybe it's kind of experimental on their part, doing all these different noises. Or I'm just kind of spitballing, but
no, it's a good theory though. No, it makes sense though. In the hoo-hoo, I've gotten that on recordings too. It's like that hoo-hoo is just for me. They do it just for me. That day they did it in the window. They made sure I heard it, but Billy couldn't hear it. He was downstairs, I was upstairs, and I heard it right through the window, but Billy never heard it. And then I was outside, I don't know, it was probably less than a week ago, and I got hoo-hooed right at. I couldn't believe it. So I hoo-hooed him back, and then I whistled. Yeah, that's right. And then when I hoo-hooed, I got a whistle back. It's... I don't know. It's that one. It's the one that's always there, which is probably the juvenile.
Yeah, probably the sentry.
Okay, so the juvenile could be the sentry, right?
Exactly, yes.
Okay. Yeah, because that's what it sounds like. Those screams, the juvenile's always there, or someone is always there, but then around 2 o'clock, you can hear the other ones come on in, and they join in. And then it sounds like there's just one or two there, until the sun comes up, even after the sun comes up.
Yeah, they probably come in, check on the sentries, and then they're off hunting, and probably leave the sentries there.
Right, yeah, and they leave them there. But it's every single night, Will, since July 4th. Every single night they're there.
Now, when they leave, how long are they typically gone before they come back?
For the winter, you saying?
Is that pretty much it? They come back in the summer?
Yeah, they come back right. This year I noticed them in the middle of June, or towards the end of June is when I first noticed them back. And it kind of makes sense because that's really when the leaves are full.
Sure.
Yeah, once that cover, it seems like once they start losing cover in the leaves is when they start to move on. But yeah, that's when they came back. So they're gone from like November to June. I don't think they go too far because I did hear them last winter from across the street from my house doing that sheep sound. There is another recording there I sent you. It's called "Trying to Get My Attention." That was last year on the last day, the last night they were there, which was I think November 7th. He yelled at my house for I think it was 12 minutes, but I shortened it up a little bit on that recording. But at the end of that recording, when he's yelling at the house, you can hear what sounds like a sheep sound. It goes, ah. And that was him making that sound. And I heard that exact same sound last April, February, March, somewhere right before Jeremiah came up.
Yeah.
I was checking my mail, and in the woods across the street from me. So they do come around. I don't think they go too far, because they really don't have to go far to be hidden. There's lots and lots of woods here.
Right.
Trying to think what other one I sent you. So one thing I did notice is an evolution of the sounds, because they were definitely just pops and clicks last year when I was a threat to them. It was pops, clicks, whistles, rattling of trees. That sound that it sounded like he was rattling a stick, but
posturing.
Right. Yeah, and they were charging into position, crashing through trees and getting to their positions and all that. And that all stopped. And once that stopped, everything's been very subtle there. Except for these past few weeks when he's screaming, they're making these sounds behind my house. And for the past few weeks, since the acorns have been falling, I have been finding a pile of acorn caps up the road from my house near the recorder and down my driveway near where I found the prints. I find a pile of acorn caps with 2 full acorns. The same exact thing. Like 5 or 6 caps, 2 full acorns down in the front yard. 2 nights later, I find it up the road on a rock. A few nights after that, I find it back down in the front of the driveway. And just last Wednesday, I found more up the road on the same rock. There's no
interesting.
There's no oak trees. Well, there is one oak tree in the front yard, but it's not the producer of the acorns.
Right, so they're carried in from somewhere else.
Absolutely, they're carrying them in. It's weird. Now, they have seen me out there collecting acorns. In fact, I was up metal detecting one day, and I could hear them popping in the woods around me. So where I was metal detecting, it was loaded with acorns. So I was collecting acorns while I was metal detecting, and over near that tree structure, that little TP structure with the bowed sapling, I left the pile of acorns right there for them. Mm-hmm. So I collected them while I was metal detecting for a few hours. Then I went over and dumped out my pouch and left them all in a pile. That was, I don't know, maybe 3 weeks ago to a month ago. And then the past 2 weeks, about 2 weeks ago, I noticed the first bunch of acorn caps. And it's definitely put there. It's weird. Like, it's not a squirrel doing this. That's another thing, that all the caps, none of them were broken.
Oh wow.
They were all popped off. Yeah, and I got pictures of all that.
Oh, great. Very good.
It's as soon as the first one I saw, I didn't think much of. And then when I saw the second one on the other end, there's one on one side of my house, because I have a road that goes straight into the woods, and 200 feet up the road is my house. So there's 200 feet of driveway between my house and the road. And that's where the prints were, and that's the first place I found the acorn shells, or the caps.
I'm going to have to come and visit you sometime when they're actually in there, maybe next summer.
Yeah, definitely, like next fall, like September, August, yeah.
Yeah,
definitely. Yeah, it's I've had people come up here and nobody wants to go up in the woods with me.
Well, I'll go up with you.
Yeah, I should say spend the night up in the woods with me, but
sure.
Yeah, I had a woman, Catherine Woodman, she's in the group. She brought a couple of her friends over last Wednesday, and I took them up there, and they were impressed. I was showing them all the bent trees and all the bowed over trees. I showed them my cast. I was showing everything I had going on there. I didn't realize she only lived a couple towns away.
Oh.
But it was a nice visit. Yeah, they came up, and I think we heard some knocks, too, as we're heading out of there, because I let them know that we were up there. I gave a couple hoo-hoos as we were going up. Uh-huh. And when we turned around to leave, we got a few knocks right from the area where I think they are. So that's all we heard. But it was interesting. But let me see. Trying to think what other recording I sent you. I sent the loons, trying to get the Jurassic one, the owls, the clicking, the whistle, coyotes, moans. And then there's one, I think it says, I don't know, IDK. Yeah, I don't know what that is. It's a weird sound. I hear a lot of strange sounds up there that I just don't know what they are. But the ones that I know are these guys. These guys, they create echoes. These things are loud, Will.
Right, and folks, that's another thing. Again, remember, some of the sounds, I mean, you think, oh, well, that's just a bird, or it's this, or it's that. But Don has actually run these through a program where you can look at the volume. So it's not normal animal sounds.
No, the especially the belch. The belch I got, when you put it on a spectrograph, it goes completely off the top and it goes completely off the bottom, which means I'm missing some of it.
Yeah.
Right. My mic just can't get those highs and lows frequencies.
Yeah, you need a little better recorder, maybe.
Exactly. Yeah, I'd like to get a nice little reel-to-reel or something out there.
Right.
Something different. I definitely need something different out there, but a different type of microphone I'm gonna need out there for those lows, because on my recordings, when these things they're coming near my recorder now, and I think I mentioned before that 2 days in a row they're making P sounds. They're going into the recorder.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, yeah. They're making it sounds like and I'm going, what the heck is that? And I've heard some weird, like, voices out there, like, blah, 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 stuff like that. And there's so many. When you asked me to get some sounds for you, I was going to say, pick a day. I really was going to just say, pick a day, and I'll get all the sounds from that one recording of that day. And that's how it's been. It really is. Unfortunately, a lot of the stuff is you really need headphones to listen to some of it.
Right.
To get those, the ones way up on the hill in the back. But it's incredible, the sounds that are coming out of there. Just by listening to those owl sounds, you can just tell.
Yeah, absolutely.
But that Jurassic sound is really, it almost sounds mechanical. And I've heard a couple screams up there that almost sound mechanical. I don't know if that describes it right, but, just like that Jurassic, like a T-Rex scream.
Yeah.
It's almost mechanical, you know what I mean? That's the way it affects the recorder, I should say.
That's more likely, yeah.
It comes across like tinny, you know what I mean? A little tinny in the recorder. So, yeah, I definitely like to get a different recorder up there next year.
Absolutely. Well, was there anything else you wanted to bring up?
Think. Or? There was, actually. I took a picture in August of that rock with the stick leaning on it, and you asked me a question. You said, is that rock in the sun? And it's the only rock in that area in the sun.
Interesting.
Yeah, I was wondering why you asked me if it was in the sun.
I'm trying to remember now.
Okay, all right.
I'll have to think about it and get back to you.
Okay, it was a big white rock that, it's good size rock, and it had about an 8-10 foot stick leaning on it at an angle, but neither end was touching the ground.
Oh, the visibility. Because if it's out in the sun, it's going to be more visible than something in the trees.
Yeah, and it's a big white rock, too.
So it's visible from some distance or different viewpoints.
Absolutely.
So it's a marker.
Okay, yeah. And it almost looks like, because this rock is on my property line from my neighbors, and it almost looks like they put the stick there to say, this is us over here and you there.
That's very possible, sure.
It almost seems like that, but it was funny when you said, is it in the sun? And I'm going, yeah, it is in the sun. How'd you know that?
Yeah, I know things.
Yeah, I'm discovering that, yes.
I know a lot of things.
I'm finding that out. Another thing. Last year, on Blab, I used to, before I joined the group, I was always asking you about ground pounding, but I was never able to explain it because by the time I could get a response up, 15 questions had already gone by.
Right.
This is what used to happen, and you know what? It has not happened this year. So whenever I would go up in the backyard, now, the ground around here is a lot of ledge, or up at my house is a lot of ledge and a lot of clay. So when a truck goes about a mile away and hits a bump in the road, I can feel it. But you can also hear the truck.
Right.
You know what I mean? You know where that thump came from.
Yeah, the sound goes through the material.
Right, and you can tell a truck from, the vibration of a plane going by. I mean, I know what it feels like when a deer runs. When a dog runs, you can feel it in the ground. Last year, I noticed pounding in the ground, and it was not a truck, it was not a vehicle, and this was up in my backyard, and it was going boom, boom, boom. Just 3 booms, and I'd feel it in the ground, and it was happening often when I'd go up into those areas. And then once I found them, and they followed me home, I don't remember it happening after that. And I remember asking you before, and then it hasn't happened since. So I just didn't bring it up. I just happened to see some of my old notes, and I saw the ground pounding, and I said, geez, I haven't felt that this year.
You know what it makes me think of, and there's a couple examples. When you look at how chimps do things, they will thump on the ground with the backs of their hands, almost like a drum roll. Now,
right.
Translating that to the Sasquatch, TW actually knows, from referring back to the film The Legend of Boggy Creek, the one made in 1970. And remember, and for anybody who's seen that, if you'll remember the group of people that were in the house one night and the thing reached through the window, the men went outside, and one of the guys was mauled by the Sasquatch. Well, he knows that guy personally. And it actually, what was shown in the film was different than what actually happened. He said this thing grabbed him and threw him on the ground, and then it proceeded to pummel him like a chimp with the backs of its hands.
Oh, yeah.
So, knowing that Sasquatches do this kind of behavior, I wonder if maybe either in play or, maybe an older individual doing, maybe kind of disciplining a younger one, or maybe on the ground as some kind of a signal. Maybe they were doing that with the backs of their hands, and that's what you heard.
Okay, because I was getting the impression that it might have been a way of letting the other Squatch know that I was up there.
It's possible if they were close together, close enough to be able to.
Yeah, because this area is not big. They could easily all be spread out in this area, and they would all feel it. I was feeling it, and I couldn't hear the pounding or figure out where it was coming from, but I was definitely feeling boom, boom, boom. It was always the same, boom, boom, boom.
Yeah, that's definitely a communication, and that's something to remember, folks. It's, like if you look at chimps, and I use chimps a lot because we get a lot of different things from chimps, and some of that's very similar to what these guys do, which we should expect because they're a primate species, so we can compare them to other primate behaviors. All these vocals and in the physical sounds, like on the soil, things like that, are all, number one, they're group specific. In other words, they might make similar vocals, but the meanings are going to be different from group to group because the individuals in that group understand what those noises, mean, what they represent.
Right.
So all of that's communication.
Yes, and now that you mention that, I have seen shows with chimps using their feet and pounding roots on trees or against trees with their feet.
Exactly. There was one that I've referred to in the past, these non-verbal cues, where when they were going to go hunt, and they were hunting other monkeys, and there was a group of these chimps, I don't remember, I think up to 20 individuals, and they were kind of clustered together, and the leader of the group kind of hopped down on his hands and slapped his feet against the tree, and that was the signal, and everybody, all the rest of them fell into line. That was the signal to start the hunt. And then all the members had their place, they had their job. It was really interesting to see that they already knew what to do. All they had to do was slap his feet on the tree, and that was the signal.
Right, yeah. I wonder if that's just bred into them instinct, or they learn that. Well, they must learn it.
I would think, and then, the hierarchy in groups. And these guys, the Sasquatch is the same way. They have hierarchy in the group, and in between groups, there's a hierarchy. In other words, one group is going to be more dominant than another.
Right.
So all of those communications are going to be, I'm sure, to an extent, learned.
Right. Yeah, because I don't know what that. I mean, I used to feel it last year, and I haven't felt it once this year at all, and I thought that was pretty strange.
I mean, of course, we're conjecturing, but you have to go somewhere with what you have.
Yeah, and with what's going on up there, and you got to remember the demeanor changed once I saw them.
Absolutely.
And then for the next 3 months, I felt like I was being tested, and then
you probably were.
I think I was, and because that slowly went away. The constant, not aggression, but they let me know that they were there and they were watching me heavy,
Right, and it almost Almost like they didn't want you to intrude beyond a certain point.
Yeah, they didn't want me in the woods.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, they didn't like me out there at all, but then it just seemed to change over time. It just seemed to change. I mean, I'm still sure I'm a threat to them, and I still do not trust them, but
right.
You know, things are a little different. Like that one, when I was playing the guitar, that one got a little freaky. He was close. Mm-hmm. He was so close to me. Well, I really wish I could have just had like a camera just to snap a bulb shot, but that would have been the last picture I ever would have got, you know?
Very likely.
I think so, yeah. If I shot a bulb in his eyes, I don't think he would have been too happy.
Probably not.
No, because I go out of the way, make sure I don't shine flashlights out there, because I know that as soon as that light goes out there, I can hear them take off. You know, so I just shine the light down in front of my feet when I walk up there, and it's crazy going up there to put the recorder because I can hear them up there. And sometimes I walk past them and I get up on the hill further than they are. And now I have to go back by them again to get back to my house. And you know, but I know they're watching, and you can hear it on the recorder. As soon as I walk away, they start clicking.
Yeah.
You know, and it's really crazy. I don't know.
I know. Investigations I've done, especially in Southwest Washington, you know, we were able to go out nightly, and I've talked about this before many times, and hear the same kinds of things. A lot of different vocals, different noises. We'd hear them running. All kinds of things. And the same thing. We didn't shine lights out. We stayed in the confines of the mowed yard. We didn't go into the pastures at night. They would leave in the daytime, so we were able to go out and look and see what they had done at night, but we stayed out of the areas at night. You know, we sort of respected that boundary.
Right. Yeah, that's I think I know where they are now. I think they actually moved from last year. They moved to a different spot. But I think they got into this spot last year. I think they moved once I saw them. Mm-hmm. And they moved to the other side. Now, all the action at my house, every noise, anything I hear going on at my house is always in the same 150 feet of wood line. And they always take off away from me in that direction. But do you think it's possible that they're taking off and then looping around and going completely around my house to the other side?
Oh, absolutely.
They would like lure me in the opposite direction.
Right.
You know?
Do you remember my doing an interview with a gentleman named Chris up in Canada?
Yes, I do, actually.
And Chris is a native. He's a Salish Indian. And he was telling me, and I kind of caught him off guard. He said, when he had his encounter, he was elk hunting, and I said something about the alpha looping back around. And he says, that's exactly. He says, I never thought about that because usually the dominant elk in a herd will do that after the herd has come through. The dominant member or individual will loop back around, and he said that's what the Sasquatch did. And he says, how did you know that? Again, I know things.
You know things, right? Yeah, because that's because I know where they are now. Me and Jeremiah, when we were here and when he found the bone, we were heading right to them. It's where the moose came from, where they are right now. And it's completely on the opposite side of my house from where they show themselves, and they always take off into the woods that way.
Let me ask you something. Is that area that they go into all the time, does it have more cover than the other areas surrounding there?
Yes.
There you go. That's the reason they're going that direction.
Yeah, nobody goes into it. It's very, very wet, swampy, and nobody goes out there. Me and Jeremiah, this is funny. I was talking to Jeremiah. I said, do you remember when we were following the moose and we were going and we couldn't believe that the moose was getting between these trees? Mm-hmm. Like there was some really narrow gaps between trees. And then I said to Jeremiah, I said, do you remember me saying I couldn't believe the moose got underneath all those bowed trees? And I thought they were bowed because of the snow. There was snow on the ground. But I've gone back to that spot, and there are bowed saplings everywhere, and that's as close as I will get because I know that they're in there.
Right.
I know they're in that area because, and there's another reason too, is the closest house to that swamp, their dog barks every single night at sunset.
Oh, there you go.
Like clockwork. And that's the same dog that was on the recordings last year barking, and we could hear him running in the woods from the dog bark.
Right.
It's the same dog. Yeah, every single night at sundown. I went down and talked to the people. I've actually been talking to people around the area because a lot of people let their kids walk the dogs into the woods.
Yeah.
And I just see kids out there with dogs, and I said, geez, I better say something.
Give them a heads up.
Yeah, just in case the dog gets a whiff of something and takes off after something, you know.
Right.
You know, so yeah, I've let a few people around the area know. And I really can't believe that nobody hears any of these sounds. I mean, I guess everybody's sleeping around. I think I'm the only one awake. There's a lot of elderly folk around where I live.
Well, you know, a lot of people might just ignore it, you know, thinking that's normal background noise, and it just doesn't register to them.
Yes, because most people would think it was an owl. You know, that's
Absolutely.
just an owl.
Yeah.
Right. And then, okay, there was one other thing I was just going to ask you about those footprints.
Yes.
When you really look at those footprints, the ball of the foot is tiny on those prints compared to a human ball. If you took away the toes on those prints, there's no ball of a foot. There's barely any ball there. Is that? I guess it must be a characteristic of the type 4.
Yeah, it's very. They have a different structure than a human foot.
Yeah, it's definitely off.
Right.
You know?
Even when you look at, you know, tracks from Northern California and other places, you know, you don't really see a pronounced ball in the foot. It's very different than a human design.
Oh, okay. And there's one good track I didn't notice before, but we'll have to look at it when you get the tracks. But
okay,
the ball of the foot slid and his toes opened up. His toes extended.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, so you can tell that they are curled up.
And I'll tell you something. I remember Renee DeHinden telling me years ago when they looked at all the prints in Northern California, and there were thousands of them. You know, they used to describe them as, you know, peas in a pod because it was just the little round part of the toe.
Right.
And he said they have to be curling their toes when they walk because that's the only part that shows is that. And then there was the ridge between, you know, the fore part of the foot and the toes. So that would account for the toes being curled.
Right. Yeah, that's the exact impression I got when I saw these prints.
Yeah.
It looked like his toes were curled, and I'm pretty sure you're right about that foot having an injury. When you really look at both of them, there's something up with his right foot.
Right. And when you're walking around barefoot out in nature, I mean, you know, of course, the most startling example was the Cripplefoot, you know, tracks from eastern Washington back in late 1970. But, you know, injuries are going to happen. I mean, you see it in all animal species. Normally, a lot of animals, if they're too handicapped, they die, of course. But with the Sasquatch, you know, seeing a foot that's injured, and when you look at those prints, it's the one foot and not the other one. The other one's pretty normal. So I think it's pretty obvious it's an injury.
Yeah. It's just, I can understand why some people looked at those prints and might think they were human. But if you really look at them, you can tell they're not. You know, one of those prints is a perfect heel print and then the ball print, but with nothing in between.
Exactly.
It didn't leave anything in between. And they both sunk into the sand.
Right.
And then another one of those prints, just the heel hit, and then when the ball took off, the ball slid backwards. So the print is shorter than the other ones, you know?
Exactly.
Yeah, there's some really cool prints there. But let me think if there's anything else. On the recordings, like I said, I think they're ramping it up. I think they're going to be leaving soon because I did notice last year they did ramp it up the past 2 weeks with the vocals. And it seemed to be closer to my house. I don't know if that is a coincidence, but you can hear them doing vocals most of the summer. Yeah. But these last 2 weeks, they come close to my house, and they get loud, and then they're gone. But that's what they did last year, and it seems to be what they're doing this year, too.
It's their pattern, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I wonder if that is. I wonder if they are like notifying the other groups out there that we will be leaving soon.
That's a distinct possibility. There's some things I'm going to run by our good friend Mr. Black and see what he has to say. That'll be one of the questions I'm going to ask him.
Okay.
In fact, I'll send him this recording and then see what he has to say about it.
Okay. Oh, good. Yeah, I know those are pretty crazy sounds. I laugh when I'm out there. Well, I am just laughing at these things because it's just so amazing that it's going on right here.
Yeah.
You know, and I guess it still hasn't sunken in yet.
No, it's one of those things it never does.
It never, right.
We're out of time, Don.
Okay, well.
Now, everyone, we're gonna keep tabs on Don and what's happening there. Of course, if they don't go away or if something happens between now and then, we'll do another update. And if we don't, nothing happens, then we'll keep our eyes on things for next year. But I'm going to put the recordings you sent me. I'm going to attach them right now. As when we finish, folks. So stay on here. You're going to hear these recordings that Don was talking about. And Don, thank you again, my friend. We'll keep up with you and what's going on there.
Oh, good. I'm looking forward to it. Thank you, Will.
All right, my friend. We'll talk to you soon.
All right, well, you have a good night. Everybody out there, be safe.
All right, buddy.
Okay, we'll see you, Will.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Creek Devil. If you or anyone you know has had an encounter with these creatures, please contact us at williamjevning@yahoo.com. That's William, Jevning @yahoo.com. All communication is confidential. Join us for another program next week. And until then, keep your eyes open.